Do you know that the ancient city of Babylon holds secrets that whisper through millennia, where stargazers climbed towering ziggurats each night to face their greatest celestial fear? Tonight, we'll discover how these early astronomers lived with the constant dread that the moon itself might abandon them forever, leaving humanity in eternal darkness. Whether you're settling into bed or already drifting toward deep sleep, I'm grateful you're here to explore these quiet corners of ancient anxiety with me. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? Perhaps somewhere the same moon our Babylonian astronomer feared still watches over your peaceful rest. It's a lovely thought, all of us finding our way to deep sleep through these gentle stories from civilizations long forgotten. As evening shadows lengthen across the mud-brick streets of Babylon in 580 BCE, astronomer Nabu-Nasir begins his careful ascent up the ziggurat stone steps, carrying the weight of an entire city's fear of what the rising moon might bring. The worn sandals on your feet make soft scraping sounds against the limestone steps as you climb the great ziggurat of Marduk. Each step upward carries you further from the comfortable murmur of evening conversations drifting through Babylon's narrow streets below. Your name is Nabu-Nasir, and you are keeper of the celestial watch, bearer of astronomical knowledge that has been passed down through generations of careful observers. Tonight, like every night for the past 15 years, you will stand vigil against the moon's potential betrayal. The woolen robe wrapped around your shoulders feels heavy in the humid evening air. Its deep blue fabric, dyed with precious indigo that arrived by caravan from distant lands, marks your status as one of the learned priests of Nabu, god of writing and wisdom. The weight of the copper amulet sewn into the robe's hem creates a gentle rhythm with each step. Small protective charms inscribed with cuneiform prayers meant to shield you from lunar malevolence. Your fingers unconsciously trace the familiar pattern of wedge marks pressed into the largest amulet. A prayer that begins, "May Sin the moon god not turn his face from the people." The climb takes nearly 20 minutes, each level of the ziggurat requiring careful navigation in the dimming light. Your hands know every irregularity in the stone rail that guides your ascent. Some blocks still bear the marks of their makers, tiny scratches left by the bronze tools that shaped them decades ago when your grandfather supervised this very construction. The limestone beneath your palm feels cool now, though by morning it will radiate warmth accumulated from tomorrow's sun. As you reach the third level, the sounds of the city begin to shift and soften. Gone are the sharp calls of merchants securing their stalls for the night, replaced by the gentler voices of mothers calling children home for their evening meal. The aroma of barley bread baking in clay ovens mingles with the smoky scent of cedar wood burning in household hearths. These are the comfortable smells of civilization, of human community gathered safely together as darkness approaches. You pause at the fourth level to catch your breath, setting down the leather satchel that contains your night's tools. Inside, carefully wrapped in soft linen, lie your observation tablets, fresh clay surfaces prepared this morning for tonight's recordings. Next to them rest your measuring instruments, a bronze gnomon for tracking shadows, a water clock for marking time's passage, and most importantly, the lunar prediction tablets that your teacher inscribed with such painstaking care 20 years ago. The weight of responsibility settles over you like a second robe. Tonight's observations will determine whether the moon continues its reliable path or begins the slow deviation that could signal cosmic disaster. Your calculations from the previous month suggested that this evening might bring the first signs of lunar instability, a slight delay in moonrise that could indicate the moon's growing reluctance to fulfill its celestial duties. Continuing your ascent, you pass the fifth level where other priests maintain their own vigils. Brother Belushezib tends the eternal flame that must burn continuously to encourage the moon's faithful return each night. The flickering light casts dancing shadows across his weathered face as he feeds carefully measured amounts of cedar chips to the flames. He nods silently as you pass. Words are discouraged during the ascent, lest they somehow interfere with the cosmic balance you all work to maintain. The 6th level holds the sacred pool where lunar reflections are studied for signs of divine displeasure. Sister Priestess Ishtar Tabni kneels beside the still water, her lips moving in silent recitation of the protective prayers. The pool's surface, black as polished obsidian, will soon mirror the rising moon. Any distortion in that reflection, any wavering or dimming, must be carefully documented and reported to the High Priest before dawn. Your legs burn slightly as you approach the 7th and final level, the observation platform where you will spend the next 8 hours monitoring the moon's behaviour. The platform stretches 30 cubits in each direction, its surface paved with smooth basalt blocks arranged in precise astronomical alignments. Carved channels in the stone create sight lines that point toward significant stellar positions, while bronze markers indicate the moon's proper rising points for each season. As you step onto the platform, the full scope of your vigil becomes apparent. From this height, Babylon spreads below you like a map drawn on parchment. The Euphrates River winds through the city's heart, its waters reflecting the last golden light of sunset. Gardens terraced against the palace walls create patches of green that will soon disappear into shadow. In the distance, the walls of the city rise like protective arms, their mud brick construction glowing warm and brown in the dying light. But your attention cannot linger on earthly beauty. Already the eastern horizon shows the first pale glow that precedes moonrise. Your hands move automatically to arrange the night's equipment. The clay tablets emerge from their linen wrapping, their surfaces smooth and ready to receive the careful cuneiform marks that will record tonight's lunar observations. You set them on the stone ledge built specifically for this purpose, positioning them to catch enough starlight for writing without exposing them to potential lunar emanations. The bronze instruments require careful placement as well. The gnomon stands upright in its designated socket, ready to cast shadows by moonlight that will reveal any deviation in the moon's path. The water clock requires filling from the sacred jar kept always at this level. Water blessed by the morning prayers of 7 priests and kept pure through careful filtration through fine linen cloth. Your prediction tablets spread before you like ancient maps of cosmic possibility. These were created through decades of painstaking observation by your predecessors, tracking the moon's complex dance across the heavens. Each tablet records different aspects of lunar behaviour, rising times throughout the year, the changing shapes of waxing and waning, the rare and terrifying moments when the moon disappears entirely during eclipse events. Tonight's particular concern focuses on what the ancient texts call lunar reluctance, the gradual lengthening of time between sunset and moonrise that suggests the moon grows weary of its nightly journey. According to calculations passed down through 5 generations of moon watchers, this reluctance follows predictable cycles, building over months until reaching a crisis point where the moon might simply refuse to rise at all. The thought sends familiar cold fingers of anxiety along your spine. A moonless night lasting more than the natural monthly cycle would plunge humanity into chaos. Crops planted and harvested by lunar timing would fail. Women's cycles would fall into confusion, disrupting the careful planning of marriages and births. Most terrifying of all, the delicate balance between light and darkness that keeps malevolent spirits at bay would collapse, leaving human communities defenseless against cosmic forces beyond their understanding. You arrange your writing reed and the small lamp that will provide just enough light for record keeping. The lamp burns a special oil blend, olive oil from western lands mixed with sesame oil, pressed from seeds grown in temple gardens, combined with a few drops of cedar resin for purification. Its flame burns steady and clean, casting a small circle of warm light across your workspace without creating the brightness that might interfere with astronomical observation. The eastern horizon now shows a definite brightening. Your heart rate increases slightly, not from physical exertion, but from the familiar tension that accompanies each night's vigil. Will the moon rise on schedule, maintaining the cosmic order upon which civilization depends? Or will tonight bring the first signs of the lunar abandonment that haunts every astronomer's dreams? You settle into the observing position, kneeling on the thick woolen cushion that makes long hours of vigilance bearable. Your knees find the worn depressions in the stone that mark where countless other moon watchers have maintained this same vigil. Their presence comforts you, generation after generation of careful observers who successfully coaxed the moon through its nightly journey across the heavens. The city below continues its evening transformation. Cooking fires dot the residential quarters like earthbound stars, each one representing a family gathered safely together for the night meal. The palace complex remains illuminated by torches along its walls, where guards maintain their own vigilance against more earthly threats. From the merchants' quarter comes the soft sound of camels settling into rest after their long journey from distant trading posts. But gradually, these human sounds fade into the background as your attention focuses entirely on the eastern horizon. The brightening continues, almost imperceptibly at first, then with growing intensity. Your eyes, trained through years of night observation, detect subtle changes in the sky's colour that untrained observers would miss entirely. The deep purple of approaching night gives way to lighter shades, suggesting the moon's approach. Your hand hovers over the first clay tablet, reed poised to make the initial mark that will record tonight's moonrise time. The water clock beside you provides precise time measurement. Its steady drip marks the passing moments with reliable accuracy. According to your calculations, the moon should appear at the horizon in precisely 4 more water drops. 1 drop falls. The horizon maintains its pale glow without change. 2 drops. Still no visible moon, though the brightening continues. 3 drops. Your breath catches slightly. If the moon does not appear with the 4th drop, tonight marks the beginning of lunar reluctance, the first stage of what could become humanity's greatest crisis. The 4th drop falls with a sound like distant thunder in the quiet of your focused attention. You lean forward, straining your trained eyes toward the exact point where the moon should emerge. And there, yes, a silver edge appears at the horizon's rim. Relief floods through your body like warm honey, but you maintain professional composure as you make the first careful mark on tonight's observation tablet. The moon rises precisely on schedule, its familiar face emerging from the Earth's edge with reassuring reliability. But as you watch the moon's full disk clear the horizon, something unusual catches your attention. The lunar surface appears darker than expected, its customary silver glow dimmed to an almost bronze coloration. You blink several times to clear your vision, then check your observations against the prediction tablets. This bronze colouring appears in the ancient warnings as a potential sign of lunar distress, not immediate abandonment, but perhaps a growing reluctance to maintain the full brightness that ensures cosmic balance. Your reed moves quickly across the clay, recording this deviation with careful precision. Tomorrow's report to the High Priest will require detailed analysis of what this change might signify for the weeks ahead. The moon continues its stately rise, climbing the eastern sky with its usual measured pace. You track its progress against the fixed stars, checking for any deviation from the predicted path. The constellation of the Great Twins provides reference points, 2 bright stars that should align with specific edges of the lunar disk at particular times throughout the night. As the moon rises higher, its bronze coloration gradually fades back to normal silver. This transition itself requires careful documentation. Perhaps the darkening results from atmospheric conditions near the horizon, or perhaps it signals something more concerning about the moon's internal condition. Your observations over the coming nights will help determine which interpretation proves correct. The night deepens around your vigil platform. Below in the city, most households have completed their evening meals and begun the process of securing homes for the night. Wooden shutters close across windows, blocking interior lamplight that might otherwise interfere with astronomical observation. The sounds of daily commerce fade entirely, replaced by night sounds. The distant call of an owl from the temple gardens, the soft splash of fish in the sacred pools, the whisper of wind through date palm fronds. Your focus remains fixed on lunar behaviour, but part of your awareness stays attuned to these earthly rhythms. The successful continuation of normal night sounds reassures you that cosmic balance remains intact. Owls still hunt by moonlight, fish still surface to feed on night insects, palm trees still sway in breezes, all signs that the moon continues to fulfill its role in maintaining natural order. But you cannot relax your vigilance. The bronze coloration, even though it faded, represents a deviation from expected lunar appearance. Your teacher's words echo in memory. The moon reveals its intentions through subtle signs long before dramatic changes occur. The wise observer records everything, no matter how minor it seems. You turn to a fresh section of clay tablet and begin documenting the colour transition in detail. The careful cuneiform marks capture not just the timing and appearance of the change, but also atmospheric conditions that might influence lunar appearance. Wind direction, humidity levels, the presence of dust from distant sandstorms, all factors that previous generations of observers learned to include in their records. The moon now rides clear of the horizon, beginning its nightly arc across the star-filled dome of heaven. Its path tonight should carry it through 3 major constellations, past 2 significant star clusters, and close to the bright planet that astronomers call Ishtar's Jewel. Each of these encounters provides opportunities to detect subtle deviations from expected behaviour. As you settle into the long night's work ahead, a comfortable routine establishes itself. Every few minutes, you note the moon's position against background stars. Every quarter hour, you record any changes in brightness or colour. Every hour, you perform calculations to verify that lunar motion continues within expected parameters. The prediction tablets prove invaluable guides for this work. They contain centuries of accumulated observations, patterns recognised by generations of dedicated moon watchers who face the same fears and responsibilities you carry tonight. Their careful records reveal that lunar reluctance follows predictable cycles, building gradually over months, reaching crisis points at specific intervals, then resolving back to normal behaviour through proper ritual intervention. Your calculations suggest that if tonight's bronze coloration represents the beginning of a reluctance cycle, the moon's behaviour will deteriorate slowly over the next several weeks. Moonrise will occur later each night, lunar brightness will gradually diminish, and the reliable phases that govern agricultural and religious timing may begin to drift from their expected schedule. But the prediction tablets also provide hope. Previous reluctance cycles were successfully overcome through appropriate priestly intervention, increased offerings to lunar deities, special ceremonies performed at critical times, the construction of additional observation platforms to demonstrate human dedication to celestial partnership. These measures restored normal lunar behaviour and prevented cosmic catastrophe. The moon continues its steady climb toward midnight zenith, its silver face now appearing perfectly normal despite the earlier bronze tinge. You record this return to expected appearance with careful precision, hoping that tonight's deviation proves temporary rather than the beginning of serious lunar distress. Around you, the night deepens toward its fullest darkness. The city below sleeps peacefully under lunar protection, trusting in the vigilance of observers like yourself to maintain cosmic order. In homes throughout Babylon, families rest secure in the knowledge that trained astronomers watch over their celestial safety through every hour of darkness. This trust represents both honour and burden. The knowledge that thousands of lives depend on accurate lunar observation and proper interpretation of celestial signs weighs heavily on every moon watcher's conscience. A missed warning, a misinterpreted omen, a failure to perform the correct rituals at critical moments, any of these errors could lead to disaster on a scale beyond human imagination. But tonight, despite the concerning bronze coloration at moonrise, the moon appears to be maintaining its proper course across the heavens. Your careful observations detect no deviation from predicted motion, no dimming beyond expected variation, No signs of the dramatic changes that would signal immediate crisis. As you prepare to continue the night's long vigil, checking and recording the moon's behaviour through its entire journey from eastern horizon to western setting, one question troubles your professional calm. The bronze coloration appeared exactly as described in the most ancient warning texts. But why tonight? And what does its appearance signal about the challenging weeks that may lie ahead? 3 days after the Babylonian astronomer recorded his troubling bronze moon, word reaches the temple of Khonsu in Thebes, where priest Khonsu begins his nightly preparations to ensure the moon god's continued protection over the sacred Nile. The linen sandals on your feet whisper against the polished limestone floor as you move through the temple's inner corridors. Your name is Khonsu, servant of Khonsu the moon god, keeper of lunar rituals that have protected Egypt's prosperity for over 1,000 years. The message that arrived this morning from the Mesopotamian astronomers weighs heavily in your thoughts. Reports of lunar discoloration at moonrise, the bronze tinge that ancient texts describe as the first warning of celestial abandonment. The corridor walls around you tell stories in carved hieroglyphs, painted in rich blues and golds that seem to glow even in the dim light of oil lamps. These images depict Khonsu's nightly journey across the heavens, his falcon head crowned with the lunar disk and crescent moon. In each scene, the god appears serene and powerful, crossing the star-filled sky in his sacred bark while lesser deities row him safely through the dangers of night. But you know these peaceful images mask a more troubling reality, that Khonsu, like all gods, must be constantly honoured and appeased to maintain his protection over mortal realm. Your white linen kilt, bleached to perfect purity through repeated washings in sacred waters, swishes softly as you walk. The garment reaches your knees, and is held by a belt of braided cord dyed deep blue with precious lapis lazuli. Around your neck hangs the golden pectoral of your priestly rank, a masterwork of jewellery crafting that depicts the lunar bark surrounded by protective symbols. The gold feels warm against your chest, heated by your body through the long day of temple duties. The evening air carries the mingled scents of incense and flowers from the temple gardens. Cedar resin burns constantly in braziers throughout the complex, its purifying smoke meant to cleanse any contamination that might interfere with divine presence. Mixed with this sharp, clean fragrance come softer notes. Lotus blossoms from the sacred pools, myrrh from distant punt burning in the inner sanctuaries, and the green smell of papyrus plants that grow thick along the temple's irrigation channels. You pause at the intersection of 2 corridors, checking the position of shadows cast by the evening light, filtering through high, clear story windows. The shadows tell you that approximately 2 hours remain until complete darkness. Time enough to complete the preparatory rituals that must precede tonight's lunar ceremony. These rituals have been performed unchanged for centuries, each gesture and word precisely maintained according to traditions that stretch back to the pyramid builders. Turning toward the purification chamber, you pass beneath a massive stone lintel carved with protective spells. The hieroglyphs speak of Khonsu's power over time itself, his ability to measure months and years through the changing phases of his celestial form. But they also contain warnings about what happens when lunar deities withdraw their favour. Crop failures, flooding from uncontrolled Nile waters, the birth of monsters under darkened skies. The purification chamber contains everything needed for the cleansing rituals that prepare you for direct communion with lunar powers. A pool of consecrated water reflects the last daylight from above, its surface disturbed only by the gentle bubbling of the sacred spring that feeds it. This water travelled underground from the temple's holiest well, passing through limestone rock that filters away any earthly contamination. You remove your sandals and place them carefully on the stone bench carved specifically for this purpose. The limestone feels cool and smooth beneath your bare feet as you approach the pool. The water temperature maintains perfect consistency year-round, neither too warm nor too cold, as if the gods themselves regulate its comfort for their servants. Stepping into the pool, you feel the water rise around your ankles, then your calves, finally reaching your knees as you move toward the centre. The ritual cleansing requires specific movements, each one performed with careful attention to symbolic meaning. You cup the sacred water in your palms and pour it over your head 7 times, once for each of the lunar mansions through which Khonsu travels during his monthly journey. With each pouring of water, you recite ancient words in the old language that only temple priests remember. The syllables feel familiar on your tongue despite their archaic pronunciation. sounds passed down through generations of lunar servants who performed this same ritual in this same chamber. Dua Khonsu nebwaset, praise to Khonsu, lord of Thebes. The words echo softly off the stone walls. After the seventh pouring, you remain standing in the pool for several minutes, allowing the sacred water to complete its purification work. The bronze discoloration reported by the Mesopotamian observers troubles your thoughts. If Khonsu shows similar signs of distress here in Egypt, tonight's ritual takes on critical importance. The moon god's abandonment would leave the Nile Valley vulnerable to forces of chaos that only lunar protection can hold at bay. You wade toward the pool's edge where clean linen towels wait on another stone bench. These towels were woven from flax grown in temple fields and bleached in sacred waters under the full moon's light. The fabric feels impossibly soft as you dry your body with the same careful attention that marked the washing ritual. Every aspect of preparation for lunar communion must reflect the purity and precision that divine beings demand from their mortal servants. A fresh kilt waits folded nearby, identical to the one you removed but newly consecrated for tonight's ceremony. The linen carries a faint fragrance of frankincense from the storage chests, where ceremonial garments rest between uses. As you wrap the kilt around your waist and secure it with the sacred blue cord, you feel the weight of responsibility settling over you like an additional garment. The next phase of preparation takes you to the offering chamber, where tonight's gifts to Khonsu await your inspection. The chamber occupies a space directly beneath the temple's main sanctuary, positioned so that any divine energy flowing downward will bless the stored offerings. Oil lamps burning in wall niches provide steady illumination that reveals the careful arrangements of food, drink, and precious objects. 7 loaves of bread rest on a low table carved from single block of red granite. The bread was baked this morning using grain from temple fields, ground by temple workers, mixed with water from the sacred spring, and shaped by bakers who maintained ritual purity throughout the process. Each loaf bears impressions made by cylinder seals that invoke Khonsu's protection, images of the lunar bark sailing through star-filled waters. Beside the bread stand 7 jars of beer, brewed according to ancient recipes that balance barley, emmer wheat, and honey in proportions specified by religious law. The beer fermented in vessels blessed during the new moon ceremony, and each jar was sealed with wax impressed with Khonsu's cartouche. The liquid inside glows golden brown in the lamplight, rich and nourishing as befits an offering to the god who controls the passage of months. Fresh fruit fills woven baskets placed around the chamber, dates from temple palms, figs from sacred groves, grapes from vineyards tended by priests who sing hymns to encourage healthy growth. Each piece of fruit was inspected for perfection before being selected for divine offering. No blemish or bruise can mar gifts presented to celestial beings whose own forms embody absolute perfection. You lift each offering in turn, examining it for any sign of deterioration that might have occurred since morning preparation. The bread remains fresh and fragrant. The beer shows no cloudiness or off-odours. The fruit maintains its perfect appearance. Satisfied with their condition, you begin arranging them on the ceremonial tray that will carry tonight's offerings to the temple's highest chamber. The words carry across the still water, their echoes returning from the courtyard walls with subtle acoustic changes that priests learn to interpret as signs of divine attention. Tonight's echoes sound clear and strong, suggesting that Khonsu remains receptive to human contact despite whatever celestial troubles may be developing. Rising from your kneeling position, you continue the procession toward the second courtyard. This passage requires climbing 17 steps, each one corresponding to a day in the lunar calendar's shortest month. The steps were carved to precise measurements, not too high to make climbing difficult while carrying offerings, not too low to diminish the sense of ascent toward divine realms. Worn smooth by centuries of priestly feet, they provide secure footing even in darkness. The second courtyard reveals different aspects of lunar worship through its architectural details. Here, the columns take the form of papyrus bundles, their capitals spreading like the plant's umbrella-shaped flowers. These columns represent the marshlands where Khonsu was said to have hidden during his childhood, protected by Isis until he grew strong enough to assume his celestial duties. The walls between the columns contain reliefs showing the god's various adventures, his battles with serpent demons, his friendship with Thoth the wisdom god, his romance with the star goddess Sopdet. Another reflecting pool waits in this courtyard's centre, but this one contains lotus blossoms that float on the surface like living stars. The flowers close their petals as darkness approaches, a daily miracle that symbolises the moon's own monthly cycle of waxing and waning. Their sweet fragrance mingles with the incense smoke that drifts from braziers positioned at the courtyard's four corners. You kneel again beside this second pool, placing the offering tray on a stone ledge designed specifically for this purpose. The second station prayer focuses on Khonsu's protective role. Guardian of those who travel by night, shield of those who work under starlight, grant your continued presence in the sky above. Let no darkness fall that is not followed by your silver light. As you speak these words, the first bats of evening begin to stir from their roosts in the temple's upper reaches. Their flight patterns trace complex loops through the courtyard's airspace, movements that priests trained in omens learn to read as indicators of cosmic stability. Tonight's bat flights appear normal, neither the frantic patterns that signal celestial disturbance, nor the sluggish movements that indicate divine displeasure. The third and final courtyard requires climbing another set of steps, this time 30 steps representing the days of a full lunar month. Your legs feel the accumulated effort of the ascent, but ritual training has conditioned your body to perform these ceremonies without visible strain. The offering tray maintains its perfect balance despite the climb, its contents undisturbed by the motion of ascent. The tray itself represents centuries of metalworking skill. Pure silver beaten thin and decorated with images of Khonsu in his various forms. Around the rim, hieroglyphic inscriptions repeat the god's names and titles. Khonsu in Thebes, beautiful of rest. Khonsu the child. Khonsu who lives on hearts. The silver reflects the oil lamp flames in dancing patterns that seem to move independently of the flickering lights. As you arrange the offerings on their sacred tray, the temple around you undergoes its own evening transformation. The sounds of daytime activity, stonemasons repairing weathered walls, scribes copying religious texts, novice priests learning ceremonial procedures, gradually fade into quieter rhythms. Evening prayers begin in distant chambers, their chanted words carried through the stone corridors like whispered conversations between gods and mortals. The main temple complex sprawls across several acres, connected by covered walkways that protect ritual processions from weather and unwanted observation. Your path tonight will take you through 3 separate courtyards, each representing a different aspect of lunar worship. The first courtyard honours Khonsu as measurer of time. The second celebrates his role as protector of travellers. The third acknowledges his power over healing and fertility. With the offerings properly arranged, you lift the silver tray and begin the ceremonial procession toward the temple's heart. The tray's weight distributes evenly across your palms, its balance perfected through generations of use in similar ceremonies. Your bare feet find their rhythm on the limestone floor, each step timed to match the ritual pace that must be neither hurried nor delayed. The first courtyard opens before you as you emerge from the interior corridors. Evening shadows stretch across the paved space, creating patterns that shift subtly as the sun completes its daily journey toward the western horizon. 4 columns support the courtyard's roof, each one carved to represent a pillar of heaven that supports the sky through which Khonsu travels. The columns' surfaces bear thousands of hieroglyphs, prayers, offerings lists, historical records of successful lunar ceremonies. A reflecting pool occupies the courtyard's centre, its surface still as polished metal in the calm evening air. This pool serves multiple ritual purposes. It provides lustral water for ceremonial washing, mirrors the moon's image for divination purposes, and creates the sacred space where divine presence can manifest during prayer. Tonight, when the moon rises, you will watch its reflection in these waters for any signs of the discoloration that concerns the Mesopotamian observers. You pause beside the pool to perform the first station of tonight's ceremony. Kneeling carefully to avoid disturbing the offering tray, you speak the traditional greeting that opens formal communication with Khonsu. Hail to you, Lord of the night sky, whose light guides travellers safely home. Accept these gifts from your devoted servants and continue your protection over the lands of Egypt. This highest courtyard provides the temple's most sacred space for lunar worship. Unlike the previous courtyards with their reflecting pools and decorative columns, this chamber focuses attention entirely on the large opening in the roof that frames a perfect square of darkening sky. When the moon rises tonight, its light will fall directly onto the altar positioned precisely at the courtyard's centre. The altar itself represents the masterwork of temple stonemasons. a single block of black granite polished to mirror smoothness and carved with the most powerful protective symbols from Egyptian magical tradition. Its surface bears shallow depressions shaped to hold specific offerings in exact positions that correspond to astronomical alignments. The largest depression, at the altar's centre, perfectly accommodates the silver tray that you now place with careful precision. Around the altar's base, 12 smaller stones represent the lunar mansions, the star groups through which Khonsu passes during his monthly journey across the heavens. Each stone bears silver inlays that form constellation patterns, their metalwork catching and reflecting even the faintest light. As full darkness approaches, these silver lines will glow with reflected moonlight, creating a star map directly on the temple floor. You take your position at the altar's eastern side, facing the direction from which Khonsu will rise. The ceremonial posture requires standing with feet precisely shoulder-width apart, hands clasped loosely at your back, head tilted upward toward the opening in the roof. This position allows for comfortable maintenance through long periods of waiting while demonstrating the respect appropriate for divine audience. The temple complex around you settles into its nighttime rhythm. Distant sounds drift from the priest's quarters, quiet conversations over evening meals, the soft scratch of reed pens as scribes complete their daily records, occasional laughter from younger priests sharing stories of their training experiences. These human sounds provide comforting background to your solitary vigil, reminders that you do not face the night's uncertainties alone. But gradually, even these gentle sounds fade as full darkness approaches. The oil lamps burning in wall niches begin to seem brighter as daylight disappears entirely. Their flames cast dancing shadows across the courtyard walls, creating patterns that shift and flow like living hieroglyphs. In this dancing light, the carved reliefs seem to move and breathe, as if the ancient stories they depict continue to unfold in eternal repetition. Your eyes adjust to the darkness as you wait for moonrise. The opening in the roof frames a rectangle of star-filled sky that grows more brilliant as the last traces of sunset fade from the western horizon. Individual constellations become visible. The Great Bear turning slowly around the celestial pole, Orion striding across the southern sky, the zigzag pattern of stars that Egyptians call the crocodile. According to your calculations, the moon should appear within the roof opening in approximately 1 hour. If the Mesopotamian reports prove accurate, tonight's moonrise may show the same bronze discoloration that troubles astronomers throughout the ancient world. Your responsibility extends beyond simple observation. You must be prepared to perform emergency rituals if Khonsu shows signs of distress that require immediate intervention. The emergency rituals wait in your memory like carefully stored tools, each procedure designed to address specific types of lunar problems. Delayed moonrise requires the chanting of acceleration hymns while burning specially prepared incense. Dimmed lunar brightness calls for offerings of polished silver and prayers that invoke Khonsu's full radiance. Complete lunar disappearance demands the most extreme measures: blood offerings, continuous chanting throughout the night, and messages sent immediately to every temple in Egypt requesting coordinated ritual support. But tonight, you hope such extreme measures will prove unnecessary. Perhaps the Mesopotamian observations resulted from local atmospheric conditions, rather than genuine celestial distress. Perhaps Khonsu's Egyptian manifestation remains untouched by whatever troubles affected his Babylonian appearance. Perhaps the bronze coloration, even if it appears here as well, represents only a minor fluctuation in divine energy, rather than the beginning of cosmic catastrophe. As you maintain your vigil beside the altar, one troubling question echoes through your thoughts. If the moon god truly begins to withdraw from his celestial duties, what power on earth could compel his return to the sky that Egypt's prosperity depends upon? Word of lunar disturbance spreads along ancient trade routes, reaching the great city of Tikal, where Mayan priest-astronomer Itzamna Ninewind prepares for the most critical ceremony of his career, preventing the moon from devouring the sun in cosmic revenge. The obsidian blade in your hands reflects the last golden light of evening as you make the final cuts in tonight's bark paper codex. Your name is Itzamna Ninewind, keeper of time's sacred cycles, reader of celestial messages written across the star-filled dome of night. The reports that arrived with yesterday's cacao traders from the northern kingdoms fill your thoughts with growing concern. Descriptions of lunar bronze coloration, temple ceremonies failing to maintain cosmic balance, whispered fears that the moon grows weary of its appointed duties. Your workshop occupies the highest chamber of the observatory pyramid, positioned to provide unobstructed views of every horizon where celestial bodies rise and set. Through the eastern opening, the jungle canopy stretches endlessly toward distant mountains, its green expanse broken only by the white limestone peaks of other temple complexes. The western opening frames the evening sky where Venus blazes like a jewel suspended in deepening blue, her brightness undimmed despite the cosmic troubles affecting other heavenly beings. The bark paper beneath your obsidian knife bears intricate calculations worked out over many days of careful observation. These glyphs record the precise timing of lunar and solar cycles, mapping the complex dance between light and darkness that maintains the world's fundamental balance. According to your computations, tonight marks a critical juncture, the moment when accumulated lunar disturbance could trigger the catastrophic event that Mayan astronomers call the Great Devouring. Your cotton hupil, dyed deep blue with indigo and decorated with jade beads that represent stars, feels comfortable despite the humid evening air. The garment reaches your knees and is secured by a sash woven with sacred patterns, geometric designs that mirror the mathematical relationships governing celestial motion. Each bead on the sash corresponds to a specific day in the ritual calendar, their arrangement allowing you to track ceremonial timing even in complete darkness. Around your neck hangs your most precious possession, a jade pendant carved with your personal day sign, the glyph that connects your individual fate to cosmic forces operating on scales beyond human comprehension. The jade feels cool against your chest despite the day's accumulated heat, its surface polished smooth through years of ritual handling. This pendant will focus divine attention during tonight's ceremony, marking you as a legitimate intermediary between human and celestial realms. The chamber around you contains the accumulated tools of astronomical observation gathered over decades of study. Stone tables support carefully arranged collections of jade counting stones, each one precisely carved to represent different temporal cycles. Obsidian mirrors, polished to perfect reflectivity, wait to capture and concentrate moonlight for divination purposes. Bundles of copal incense rest on woven mats, their resin prepared according to ancient formulas that produce smoke pleasing to celestial deities. But tonight's most important tool rests in the chamber's centre, a massive stone calendar that maps the intersection of all temporal cycles recognised by Mayan science. This calendar represents the combined knowledge of generations of timekeepers, its carved surfaces recording not just the obvious rhythms of days and months, but also the subtle periodicities that govern historical patterns, agricultural cycles, and the rise and fall of kingdoms. The calendar stone itself weighs more than 10 men could lift, carved from a single block of limestone blessed during particularly auspicious celestial alignments. Its surface bears hundreds of glyphs arranged in spiral patterns that guide the eye through increasingly complex temporal relationships. At the stone's centre, a depression holds water that reflects whatever celestial body occupies the zenith position. Tonight, this will be the moon whose behaviour threatens cosmic stability. Your fingers trace familiar pathways across the calendar's carved surface, as you review the calculations that brought you to tonight's crisis. The lunar count shows accumulated deviations from expected behaviour building over the past several months. Solar observations reveal corresponding irregularities in sunrise timing and solar brightness. Most troubling of all, Venus displays erratic motion that suggests the entire celestial mechanism may be falling out of synchronization. According to the ancient texts preserved in the temple's deepest vaults, such astronomical chaos precedes the Great Devouring, the cosmic event when accumulated lunar resentment drives the moon to attack and consume the sun. This catastrophe would plunge the world into permanent darkness, ending the agricultural cycles that support human civilization and allowing the forces of chaos to overrun the ordered cosmos that the gods established at creation. But the texts also describe preventive rituals that can restore celestial harmony if performed correctly at critical moments. Tonight represents such a moment, the last opportunity to appease lunar anger before it escalates beyond any possibility of control. The ceremony requires precise timing, perfect execution, and offerings valuable enough to demonstrate humanity's genuine commitment to cosmic cooperation. You rise from the calendar stone and move toward the chamber's eastern opening where tonight's ritual implements await final preparation. The obsidian knife used for cutting bark paper must now be cleansed and consecrated for more sacred purposes. Its blade, sharper than any metal tool, can make cuts so precise they appear almost magical to untrained eyes. The knife's handle, carved from jade and wrapped with quetzal feathers, identifies it as a ceremonial instrument worthy of divine attention. The cleansing ritual begins with copal incense burned in a clay brazier shaped like a miniature temple. The resin catches fire immediately when touched by glowing charcoal, releasing fragrant smoke that rises in perfect vertical columns in the still evening air. This smoke will carry prayers and offerings upward to celestial realms, creating a communication channel between mortal ceremony and divine consciousness. You pass the obsidian blade repeatedly through the copal smoke, speaking ancient words in the ritual language that only temple astronomers remember. These words invoke the knife's spiritual essence, awakening its power to make cuts that separate not just physical materials, but also different states of reality. Tonight, this blade must cut through the barriers between human and divine realms, creating openings through which celestial anger can be released harmlessly. The knife's consecration complete, you turn attention to the night's primary offering, sheets of bark paper covered with your most accurate astronomical calculations. These represent months of careful observation, mathematical analysis, and scholarly consultation with the codices inherited from previous generations of timekeepers. The knowledge recorded on these pages could guide agricultural planning for years, predict royal succession patterns, or determine optimal timing for military campaigns. But tonight, this precious knowledge will be burned as offering smoke, its information content sacrificed to demonstrate humanity's willingness to give up valuable possessions in exchange for continued cosmic stability. The smoke from burning calculations will rise to lunar realms carrying proof of human dedication to maintaining the mathematical relationships that govern celestial motion. You arrange the calculation sheets on a stone platform built specifically for offering ceremonies. Each sheet must be positioned according to the temporal cycle it represents: daily calculations nearest the east, monthly patterns toward the south, yearly observations westward, and the great cycle computations facing north toward the celestial pole around which all other motions revolve. The evening air begins to stir as thermal currents shift with the approaching sunset. These breezes will affect how offering smoke rises and disperses, potentially influencing the ceremony's effectiveness. You observe wind direction and strength carefully, adjusting the position of incense braziers to ensure optimal smoke flow when the ritual reaches its climax. From your elevated position atop the observatory pyramid, the sounds of Tikal's evening activities drift upward like auditory offerings to celestial realms. Market vendors secure their goods for night storage, calling final bargains to late customers. Children play in residential courtyards, their laughter mixing with parental voices calling them home for evening meals. Craftsmen put away tools and cover work projects that will resume tomorrow morning. These normal sounds of daily life remind you why tonight's ceremony carries such critical importance. Below in the city, thousands of people continue their routines without understanding how close their world stands to cosmic catastrophe. They trust in the temple astronomers' ability to maintain celestial order, never suspecting that such maintenance requires constant vigilance and periodic intervention through elaborate ritual procedures. The responsibility weighs heavily on your shoulders as you continue the evening's preparations. A single error in tonight's ceremony, wrong timing, improper offerings, mispronounced prayers, could trigger the very catastrophe you seek to prevent. The moon's anger, if not properly channeled and released, might indeed turn toward destructive revenge against the solar deity, whose daily journey provides light and warmth essential for life. You check the water level in the Calendar Stone's central depression, ensuring adequate depth to reflect tonight's moon clearly. The water comes from a sacred cenote deep in the jungle, collected during appropriate lunar phases and stored in jade vessels to preserve its spiritual purity. This water serves as more than mere reflecting surface. It creates a connection between terrestrial ceremony and celestial reality, allowing divine beings to manifest their presence in observable form. As full darkness approaches, you light the oil lamps that will provide necessary illumination for reading ceremonial texts. These lamps burn a special blend of oils extracted from sacred plants, chicle from jungle trees, cacao butter from temple plantations, and precious copal oil that traders bring from distant mountain forests. The combined fragrance creates an atmosphere conducive to divine communication, while the steady flames provide reliable light that won't flicker at critical moments. The ceremonial texts themselves represent your most treasured possessions. Bark paper codices painted with hieroglyphic instructions passed down through generations of temple astronomers. These books contain not just the prayers and offerings required for tonight's ritual, but also detailed explanations of the cosmic principles that make such ceremonies necessary. Reading them requires years of study to master the complex interplay between mathematical calculation and religious symbolism. You spread the primary codex across a wooden reading stand carved with protective symbols. The book opens to pages depicting the great devouring myth, illustrations showing the moon as a fierce jaguar deity stalking the sun across star-filled heavens. In the final images, the jaguar moon pounces upon the solar disk, swallowing it entirely and leaving the world in permanent darkness, populated only by demons and monsters. But other pages show alternative outcomes, images of successful appeasement rituals that calm lunar anger and restore cosmic harmony. In these illustrations, the moon appears as a benevolent goddess receiving offerings from grateful human worshippers. The sun shines peacefully in a sky where all celestial bodies maintain their proper relationships, providing the stable environment that allows civilization to flourish. Your task tonight involves steering reality toward this second outcome through precise performance of the prescribed rituals. The margin for error remains extremely narrow. Cosmic forces operate according to mathematical laws that permit no approximation or casual interpretation. Every gesture, every word, every moment of timing must conform exactly to the specifications recorded in the ancient texts. The eastern horizon begins to show the first pale glow that precedes moonrise. Your heart rate increases slightly as the critical moment approaches. According to your calculations, the moon should appear in approximately 30 minutes, rising through a specific section of sky, where particular star patterns provide the astronomical framework necessary for tonight's ceremony. You take your position beside the calendar stone, adopting the ritual posture that opens communication channels with celestial realms. Your feet find the carved footprints in the limestone floor where countless previous timekeepers stood for similar ceremonies. Your hands assume the prescribed gestures, left palm open toward the eastern horizon, right hand holding the consecrated obsidian knife pointed toward the zenith. The jungle around Tikal settles into its nighttime rhythms as the last traces of sunset fade from the western sky. Howler monkeys call from distant trees, their voices carrying for miles through the humid air. Night birds begin their hunting songs, joined by the rustle of countless insects emerging for nocturnal activities. These natural sounds create the acoustic background against which tonight's ceremony will unfold. But your attention focuses entirely on the eastern horizon, where the moon's appearance will signal the beginning of the most critical ritual of your astronomical career. If the lunar bronze coloration appears here as it did in Mesopotamia and Egypt, if the moon shows signs of the anger described in ancient warnings, if the celestial mechanism continues its slide toward chaos, tonight may be humanity's last chance to prevent cosmic catastrophe. As the horizon brightens and the moment of moonrise approaches, one question dominates your thoughts. Will the offerings and prayers of a single priest prove sufficient to turn aside the accumulated wrath of a goddess, whose power spans the entire dome of heaven? As news of lunar disturbance reaches the misty shores of ancient Britain through Celtic traders, Druid Brenos begins the sacred fire vigil that has protected his people through countless generations, knowing this night may determine whether the moon's silver light continues to ward off the ancient darkness. The oak staff in your weathered hands feels heavier tonight as you make your way through the sacred grove toward the standing stones. Your name is Brenos, keeper of the ancient ways, guardian of the fires that hold back primordial darkness. The bronze merchants who arrived from Gaul this morning brought troubling news, reports from distant lands of lunar weakness, celestial bronze coloration, and temple ceremonies that fail to maintain the delicate balance between light and shadow. Your woolen cloak, dyed deep green with sacred mistletoe and woven by the women of your settlement, pulls tight around your shoulders in the evening mist. The fabric holds the earthy scents of peat smoke and wet bracken, comforting reminders of the hearth fires that warm your people through Britain's long, dark winters. Beneath the cloak, your tunic bears embroidered patterns that tell the story of lunar protection, spirals representing the moon's phases, interlaced knots symbolizing the eternal cycle of waxing and waning light. The grove around you whispers with evening sounds that speak of the natural world preparing for night's mysteries. Wind stirs through ancient oak leaves, with voices that trained Druids learned to interpret as messages from the spirit realm. Somewhere in the canopy above, an owl calls its hunting song, a sound that your people regard as the moon's own voice, announcing her nightly journey across star-filled skies. The path beneath your feet follows routes worn smooth by generations of Druids who walk this same way to tend the sacred fires. Moss cushions your steps where the track passes through boggy ground, while exposed roots create natural steps on the hillier sections. Your bare feet know every stone and hollow along this route, having travelled it in all seasons and all weathers for more than 30 years of faithful service. Ahead through the mist, the standing stones emerge like grey giants from the landscape. These massive sarsen blocks were raised by your ancestors in ages past, positioned according to astronomical calculations that align with critical points of lunar motion. Each stone bears carved spirals and cup marks that channel celestial energy downward into the earth, creating a sacred space where mortal fire can commune with divine light. The central hearth lies ready for tonight's vigil, its stone-lined depression filled with carefully arranged fuel. Oak logs form the foundation, wood from trees that lived for centuries, accumulating solar energy that will be released as purifying flame. Above the oak, birch kindling creates the structure needed for quick ignition, while dried bracken and sacred herbs provide the initial spark that will grow into protective fire. You kneel beside the prepared hearth and begin the lighting ritual that must precede every fire vigil. From your leather pouch comes the fire steel, a piece of iron blessed during the summer solstice and tempered in sacred springs. The striker, carved from flint found at ancient burial sites, completes the tools needed to create fire through your own efforts, rather than borrowing flame from existing sources. The first sparks leap from steel striking stone, tiny points of light that mirror the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky above. These sparks fall onto char cloth prepared from linen blessed by the moon's full light, creating the ember that will father tonight's protective fire. You breathe gently on the glowing char, feeding it with careful puffs of air until flames begin to lick through the bracken kindling. The fire catches and spreads with satisfying certainty, its growing light pushing back the evening shadows that gather between the standing stones. As flames climb higher through the carefully arranged fuel, you speak the ancient invocation that opens communication with lunar powers. Silver Mother who walks the night sky, accept this flame as token of our devotion. Let your light continue to guard us from the terrors that hunt in darkness. The words echo strangely among the stone circle, their sound altered by acoustic properties that your ancestors built into this sacred space. The echoes seem to carry upward into the misty air, bearing your prayers towards celestial realms where divine beings decide the fate of mortal communities. Tonight, those prayers carry special urgency given the troubling reports from distant lands. You settle into the meditation posture that will sustain you through long hours of fire tending, your back straight against the standing stone that serves as your traditional vigil seat. This stone, taller than the others, and positioned to frame the moon's rising point, bears carved spirals that seem to move and shift in the firelight. Your hands rest on your knees in the ritual gesture that opens awareness to spiritual presences. The settlement below the grove shows scattered points of light as families kindle their evening hearth fires. These domestic flames provide warmth and cooking heat, but they also serve defensive purposes, barriers of light that protect households from malevolent spirits that emerge with darkness. Your sacred fire atop the hill extends this protection across the entire community, creating a shield of blessed flame that supernatural threats cannot penetrate. From your elevated position, you can hear the gentle sounds of normal evening activities drifting up through the mist. Cattle low softly as they settle for the night in their stone-walled enclosures. Women call children inside for warmth and safety. Men secure tools and check that gates remain properly barred against both natural predators and supernatural dangers that hunt when darkness falls. These familiar sounds reassure you that the community continues its normal rhythms despite the cosmic troubles brewing in distant realms. But you know this normalcy depends entirely on maintaining the protective rituals that your druidic training taught you to perform with unwavering dedication. A single night without proper fire vigil could leave the settlement vulnerable to forces that mortal weapons cannot harm. The fire burns steadily now, its flames reaching toward the low-hanging clouds that often blanket this northern land. The light illuminates the inner surfaces of the standing stones, revealing carved symbols that become visible only under firelight conditions. These markings record astronomical observations made by your predecessors, notations tracking lunar phases, seasonal changes, and the rare eclipses that terrify common people, but provide valuable information to trained observers. You add oak chips to the fire, maintaining the careful balance of fuel that produces maximum light without wasteful consumption. The art of fire tending requires constant attention to flame colour, smoke production, and heat distribution. Too little fuel allows the fire to weaken, reducing its protective power. Too much fuel creates smoke that obscures astronomical observation and wastes precious resources. The evening mist begins to thicken as temperature differences between land and sky create the atmospheric conditions that often accompany celestial events. This mist serves multiple purposes in Druidic ritual. It conceals sacred ceremonies from casual observation, amplifies sound in ways that aid spiritual communication, and creates the liminal environment where interactions between mortal and divine realms become possible. Through the mist, you begin to detect the first pale glow on the eastern horizon that announces the moon's approach. Your heartbeat quickens slightly as the moment of truth approaches. Will tonight's moonrise show the bronze coloration reported from Mediterranean lands? Will the silver light that has protected your people for countless generations continue its faithful journey across British skies? You reach for the leather bag containing tonight's special offerings: herbs gathered during specific lunar phases, metals blessed in sacred streams, and carved tokens representing your community's commitment to cosmic cooperation. These offerings will be fed to the sacred fire at precise moments during the moon's rise, creating offering smoke that carries human devotion upward to celestial attention. The primary offering consists of vervain gathered during the last full moon, dried according to ancient methods, and blessed with water from the sacred well that has never known sunlight. This herb burns with peculiar properties. Its smoke rises in straight columns even in windy conditions, and its fragrance allegedly attracts beneficial spirits while repelling malevolent entities. Beside the vervain lies a small piece of silver, hammered thin and inscribed with augur marks that spell protective formulas. This metal represents your people's most precious possession, offered freely to demonstrate their genuine commitment to maintaining cosmic balance. When burned in sacred fire, silver produces flames of unusual colours that supposedly please lunar deities. The third offering requires more courage to complete: drops of your own blood, freely given to show personal dedication to the community's spiritual welfare. The bronze needle in your pouch, blessed during summer solstice and kept sharp through careful maintenance, will provide the implement needed to make the small cuts that produce offering blood without causing lasting harm. As the eastern glow strengthens, you begin the chanted prayers that must accompany the fire vigil. These ancient verses, passed down through oral tradition for centuries, tell the story of how the first Druids learned to kindle sacred fires that could communicate with celestial powers. The words flow naturally from memory trained through years of repetition, their rhythm matching the steady pulse of flame consumption. The chanting creates a meditative state that opens awareness to spiritual presences normally hidden from mortal perception. In this altered consciousness, the standing stones seem to pulse with ancient energy. The fire flames take on almost human characteristics, and the mist swirls in patterns that suggest deliberate intelligence rather than random atmospheric motion. Through your enhanced awareness, you begin to sense the approaching presence of the moon before its physical appearance. This presence feels different tonight, still recognisably lunar, but carrying undertones of distress that confirm the troubling reports from distant lands. The silver light that usually radiates comfort and protection now seems tinged with uncertainty, as if the celestial being who provides it struggles with some internal conflict. You add the first pinch of vervain to the sacred fire, watching as the herb burns with the characteristic green flame that indicates proper spiritual preparation. The smoke rises straight upward despite the evening breeze, carrying your community's prayers toward the troubled lunar presence that approaches the eastern horizon. The moment of moonrise arrives with dramatic suddenness as the silver disk clears the distant hills. But your trained eyes immediately detect the anomaly that fills your heart with dread. The moon's surface shows distinct bronze coloration, exactly as described in the reports from Mediterranean traders. The celestial crisis has reached even these remote northern shores. You spring into action, feeding all remaining offerings into the sacred fire simultaneously. Vervain, silver, and blood offerings combine to produce flames of extraordinary intensity and unusual colours. Green, blue and white fire reaches toward the bronze-tinged moon like fingers of light seeking to restore normal celestial conditions through sheer force of human devotion. The enhanced firelight illuminates the standing stones with unprecedented brilliance, revealing carved symbols that remain invisible under normal conditions. These emergency markings, created by ancient Druids who face similar crises, provide instructions for extreme protective measures that require dangerous personal sacrifice from the officiating priest. As you prepare to undertake these extreme measures, knowing they may cost your life but could save your entire community from supernatural devastation, one desperate question echoes through your thoughts. Will the ancient pacts between Druid fire and lunar light prove strong enough to overcome whatever cosmic forces threaten to extinguish the silver protection that guards humanity through darkness? The silk brush in your steady hand traces delicate characters across rice paper as you record the final calculations that will determine tonight's defensive strategy. Your name is Li Wei Ming, Grand Astrologer to Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty, keeper of celestial knowledge that spans 3,000 years of careful observation. The reports that arrived through the Silk Road networks over recent weeks paint an increasingly troubling picture. Lunar disturbances spreading across the known world like ripples from a stone thrown into still water. Your study chamber occupies the highest tower of the Imperial Observatory, positioned to provide unobstructed views in all directions across the capital city of Chang'an. Through the eastern window, morning light illuminates the mathematical instruments that have guided your calculations. Bronze armillary spheres that model celestial motion, jade counting boards for complex computations, and silk charts mapping the 28 lunar mansions through which the moon travels during each monthly cycle. The chamber walls display scrolls containing the accumulated wisdom of your predecessors, astronomers who served previous dynasties with the same dedication you now offer to the Han throne. These scrolls record not just the mathematical relationships governing celestial motion, but also the historical patterns that reveal how cosmic disturbances affect earthly affairs. Times of lunar chaos inevitably coincide with periods of political upheaval, natural disasters, and social collapse. Your silk robes, dyed imperial yellow and embroidered with dragon motifs that spiral around golden thread representations of the celestial sphere, mark your exalted position in the court hierarchy. Only the emperor himself may wear more elaborate garments. The weight of these formal robes reminds you constantly of the responsibility you bear, not just to record astronomical events, but to interpret their significance for imperial policy and dynastic survival. The morning's work has confirmed your worst fears through mathematical analysis that admits no optimistic interpretation. The bronze lunar coloration reported from Western kingdoms, combined with irregular timing observations from your own network of provincial observers, indicates that the celestial dragon grows restless in its cosmic lair. According to ancient texts, this restlessness precedes the dragon's attempt to devour the moon entirely, an event that would plunge the Middle Kingdom into chaos and likely end the mandate of heaven that legitimizes imperial rule. Your fingers arrange the calculation strips with practiced precision, each silk ribbon inscribed with numerical values that represent different aspects of celestial mechanics. These strips can be combined in various patterns to model different astronomical scenarios, allowing you to test theoretical predictions against observed phenomena. Today's calculations reveal no combination that avoids the conclusion that a major lunar eclipse approaches, possibly the most severe in recorded history. The eclipse itself poses manageable challenges if handled with appropriate ritual responses. Chinese astronomers have developed effective procedures for protecting the moon during dragon attacks. Bronze gongs to frighten the celestial beast, coordinated prayers from Buddhist monasteries and Confucian temples, imperial proclamations that mobilize the entire population in defense of cosmic order. But the current situation presents complications that previous generations never faced. Unlike normal eclipses that occur predictably according to mathematical cycles, this potential dragon attack appears to be part of a larger pattern of cosmic instability affecting celestial bodies throughout the known world. The Silk Road traders describe similar phenomena in Parthian territories, Roman provinces, and even the distant barbarian lands beyond the Hindu Kush mountains. Such widespread disturbance suggests forces operating on scales that dwarf individual kingdoms or empires. You rise from your calculation table and move toward the western window, where afternoon light provides better illumination for examining the special texts that address extraordinary astronomical events. These scrolls, written on the finest silk by master calligraphers, contain information so sensitive that only the Grand Astrologer and the Emperor himself are permitted to read them. The knowledge they preserve could prevent dynastic collapse or, if misused, accelerate the very disasters they describe. The first scroll contains the complete chronicle of the Dragon Wars, historical records of previous conflicts between celestial dragons and lunar deities. These accounts describe eclipses so severe that they lasted for hours rather than minutes, plunging entire regions into supernatural darkness inhabited by demons and hungry ghosts. During such events, normal social order collapsed as terrified populations fled cities for mountain caves, where they hoped to hide from cosmic catastrophe. But the Chronicle also records successful defensive campaigns that drove attacking dragons back to their celestial lairs through coordinated human effort. These victories required unprecedented cooperation between normally competing factions, imperial armies working alongside Taoist hermits, Confucian scholars collaborating with folk shamans, wealthy merchants contributing treasure alongside peasant farmers offering their labour. Only through such unity could mortal efforts generate sufficient spiritual energy to influence cosmic conflicts. The second scroll presents even more troubling information, the secret doctrine of celestial cycles, which describes patterns of cosmic instability that repeat over periods measured in millennia rather than years. According to this doctrine, the current age approaches the end of a major cycle, during which the fundamental structures maintaining cosmic order gradually weaken and eventually collapse entirely. The doctrine teaches that such transitions cannot be prevented through human effort, but they can be managed through proper preparation and ritual intervention. Communities that understand the approaching changes can take measures to preserve essential knowledge, protect vulnerable populations, and maintain social cohesion during the chaotic period that accompanies cosmic transformation. Those who ignore the warnings face complete destruction when the old order finally fails. Your hands tremble slightly as you unroll the third and most dangerous scroll, the Manual of Emergency Rituals, which provides instructions for desperate measures that risk the practitioner's life, but might preserve civilization itself. These rituals require personal sacrifice from the Grand Astrologer, who must offer his own life force as payment for divine intervention in cosmic affairs. Previous astronomers who attempted such measures rarely survived the experience, but their sacrifices sometimes bought enough time for their successors to develop more sustainable solutions. The afternoon sun streams through the western window as you study these sobering texts, its light creating patterns that shift across the floor as time progresses toward evening. Outside, the sounds of normal city life continue unchanged. Merchants calling their wares in the marketplace, artisans hammering metal in their workshops, children playing in residential courtyards. These people depend on your expertise to protect them from threats they cannot understand or imagine. The weight of responsibility feels heavier today than ever before in your 20-year career as Imperial Astronomer. Previous challenges involved predicting seasonal flooding, calculating optimal dates for Imperial ceremonies, or interpreting unusual celestial appearances that might indicate divine displeasure with government policies. But tonight's potential crisis threatens not just political stability, but the continuation of civilization itself. You return to your calculation table and begin preparing the detailed report that must reach the Emperor before sunset. Imperial protocol requires that all astronomical warnings be presented through elaborate ceremonial procedures that demonstrate appropriate respect for the Son of Heaven's divine authority. The report itself must be written on silk with gold ink, sealed with your personal chop, and accompanied by supporting documentation that justifies every prediction and recommendation. The writing process demands careful attention to both scientific accuracy and political sensitivity. The Emperor must understand the genuine severity of tonight's threat without becoming so alarmed that he makes hasty decisions that could worsen the crisis. You must recommend specific defensive measures without appearing to question imperial authority or suggest that mortal efforts alone might prove insufficient against cosmic forces. Your brush moves steadily across the silk surface, forming characters that balance technical precision with the flowery language expected in imperial correspondence. Each stroke requires conscious control to maintain the perfect calligraphy that court protocol demands. A single poorly formed character could result in the entire report being rejected without consideration, potentially dooming the Empire to face tonight's crisis without proper preparation. The report begins with ritual acknowledgements of imperial wisdom and divine protection, then proceeds to describe the astronomical observations that indicate approaching danger. You present the evidence methodically, timing irregularities in lunar motion, colour variations observed by multiple independent observers, mathematical calculations that predict tonight's eclipse with disturbing accuracy. Each piece of evidence leads logically to the next, building an undeniable case for immediate defensive action. The recommendation section requires even more delicate handling. You must suggest military preparations without implying that the Emperor's forces might prove inadequate against supernatural threats. You must recommend religious ceremonies without favouring any particular sect in ways that might offend competing factions. Most challenging of all, you must hint at the possibility that emergency rituals might require personal sacrifice from high-ranking officials, without directly suggesting that the Emperor himself faced such dangers. As afternoon progresses toward evening, servants arrive with the evening meal that will sustain you through tonight's vigil. The food reflects your elevated position. Delicate dishes prepared by imperial chefs using ingredients from across the known world. Rice from the southern provinces, fish from mountain streams, vegetables grown in palace gardens, and exotic spices that travelled the Silk Road from distant western kingdoms. But tonight, even these elaborate delicacies taste like ash in your mouth. The approaching crisis dominates your thoughts so completely that physical sensations seem distant and unimportant. You eat mechanically, knowing your body needs nourishment for the long night ahead, but finding no pleasure in flavours or textures that normally bring comfort after difficult days. The completed report lies ready for imperial presentation, its gold characters gleaming in the afternoon light. Beside it rest the supporting documents that provide detailed justification for every warning and recommendation. Calculation tables, historical precedents, and copies of reports from provincial observers throughout the empire. This documentation represents months of careful preparation, condensed into forms that can be quickly reviewed during tonight's emergency court session. You seal the documents with red wax pressed with your personal chop, then wrap them in yellow silk according to imperial protocol. A trusted courier waits in the antechamber to carry this urgent message to the Forbidden City where the Emperor maintains his private residence. The courier's horse stands ready in the courtyard below, selected for speed and endurance from the imperial stables. As the courier departs with your report, you turn attention to preparing the observatory for tonight's critical observations. The bronze instruments must be cleaned and calibrated to ensure maximum accuracy during eclipse timing. The recording materials must be arranged for easy access in darkness. Silk scrolls, brushes, inkstones and oil lamps positioned to provide adequate light without interfering with astronomical observation. The gong that will be used to frighten the celestial dragon requires special preparation. Its bronze surface must be polished to perfect reflectivity, its supporting frame adjusted to produce maximum resonance, its striker wrapped with blessed silk to enhance the spiritual power of its sound. This gong, cast during the previous dynasty according to ancient specifications, has successfully defended the moon through dozens of previous eclipses. But tonight's challenge may exceed the capabilities of traditional defensive measures. The reports from Western kingdoms describe phenomena that suggest the attacking dragon possesses unusual strength and determination. Normal gong beating, prayer chanting, and torch lighting might prove insufficient against such a formidable cosmic predator. You open the Manual of Emergency Rituals to review the procedures you hope will not become necessary. The most extreme ritual involves the Grand Astrologer offering his own life force to strengthen lunar deities' resistance to dragon attack. This procedure requires precise timing, specific equipment, and acceptance of the high probability that the practitioner will not survive the experience. The ritual components wait in a locked cabinet that has remained unopened throughout your tenure as Imperial Astronomer. Previous holders of your position prepared these materials but never needed to use them, passing their deadly knowledge to successors who hoped the tradition would continue indefinitely. Tonight may break that hopeful pattern. The cabinet contains items that exist nowhere else in the Empire. A jade knife consecrated during solar eclipses, silk cords blessed by hermit sages, and medicinal herbs gathered from mountain peaks where no human foot has touched ground for centuries. These materials can focus human life force into forms that celestial beings can utilize for defensive purposes, but the process inevitably drains the practitioner beyond any possibility of recovery. As evening shadows begin to lengthen across the observatory floor, you contemplate the possibility that tonight might be your last as a living human being. The The prospect brings surprising peace rather than terror. Your life has been devoted to understanding cosmic forces and protecting human civilization from astronomical threats. If that devotion now requires the ultimate sacrifice, perhaps death in such service represents the most fitting conclusion to your scholarly career. But alongside this acceptance comes determination to exhaust all conventional options before resorting to desperate measures. The traditional dragon fighting techniques might still prove adequate if executed with sufficient precision and coordination. The imperial forces, religious communities and civilian population must be given every opportunity to demonstrate that unified human effort can overcome even extraordinary cosmic challenges. The eastern horizon begins to show the first pale glow that precedes moonrise as you complete your preparations for the night's vigil. Your instruments stand ready, your calculations are complete, your reports have been delivered to imperial attention. Nothing remains but to observe tonight's events with the careful attention that your training demands and the courage that your position requires. From your elevated position atop the observatory tower, the great city of Chang'an spreads in all directions like a living map of human civilization. Countless oil lamps begin to flicker to life as families prepare for evening meals and nighttime activities. These small flames represent the accumulated achievements of thousands of years of human progress. Art, literature, philosophy, technology, and social organization that elevate mortal existence far above mere animal survival. All of this could disappear tonight if the celestial dragon succeeds in its assault on the moon. Without lunar light to maintain cosmic balance, the careful structures of civilization would collapse into chaos within days. Bandits would emerge from mountain hideouts, hungry ghosts would descend from their spiritual realms, and the natural disasters that follow cosmic disturbances would devastate the agricultural foundations that support urban populations. But as you maintain your vigil beside the polished bronze instruments, watching the eastern sky for the first appearance of tonight's endangered moon, one fragile hope sustains your courage. Perhaps 3 millennia of accumulated Chinese wisdom, combined with desperate love for everything human civilization has achieved, will prove sufficient to turn aside even the hunger of a cosmic dragon, whose appetite spans the heavens themselves. The ivory-handled augur's staff clicks rhythmically against cobblestones as you make your way through Rome's darkening streets toward the Campus Martius, where tonight's emergency observations will take place. Your name is Marcus Cornelius Maximus, senior augur of the College of Pontifices, interpreter of divine will through celestial signs that have guided Roman destiny for 7 centuries. The dispatches that arrived this morning from provincial governors throughout the empire carry increasingly urgent reports. Lunar anomalies spreading like plague across the known world, threatening the very foundations of Roman dominion. Your toga praetexta, its purple stripe gleaming in the light of street torches, marks your elevated status within Rome's religious hierarchy. The heavy woolen fabric, woven from the finest fleeces of Tarentine sheep and fulled to perfect whiteness in the workshops near the Tiber, weighs against your shoulders like the responsibility you bear for interpreting divine intentions. Beneath the toga, your tunic bears embroidered symbols representing the 12 major gods whose favour maintains Roman prosperity: Jupiter's eagle, Mars's spear, Minerva's owl, and the crescent moon of Diana who guards travellers through darkness. The streets around you pulse with the normal energy of a Roman evening, as citizens complete their daily business before retiring to their homes. Shopkeepers secure their stalls with iron locks forged in the workshops of skilled smiths, whose techniques have been refined through generations of practice. Tavern keepers light oil lamps that will burn through the night, providing gathering places where off-duty soldiers and craftsmen share news from across the empire. The sounds of conversation, laughter, and occasional disputes create the familiar urban symphony that has accompanied Roman life for centuries. But tonight these normal sounds carry undertones of anxiety that your trained senses detect like discordant notes in familiar music. Conversations pause when groups notice your distinctive garments and official staff, citizens seeking reassurance that religious authorities have the situation well in hand. Children cling closer to their parents as families hurry home earlier than usual. Even the street dogs seem restless, gathering in packs and howling at empty air as if sensing supernatural presences invisible to human perception. Your leather satchel contains the essential tools for tonight's augury. Bronze instruments calibrated according to specifications handed down through centuries of Roman religious practice. The primary instrument, a brass astrolabe crafted by Greek artisans and modified according to Roman theological requirements, will measure lunar position with precision adequate to detect even minor deviations from expected behaviour. The backup instruments include a bronze gnomon for shadow measurement, a water clock for accurate time recording, and the sealed amphorae containing sacred oil that will fuel tonight's offering flames. The Campus Martius spreads before you as you emerge from the residential districts, its vast open space providing the unobstructed horizon views necessary for accurate astronomical observation. This sacred field has witnessed countless religious ceremonies since Rome's founding, triumphal processions celebrating military victories, census rituals that counted every Roman citizen, and the elaborate funeral games that honoured deceased emperors. Tonight, it will host what may be the most crucial augury in Roman history. The temporary altar constructed this afternoon according to your precise specifications occupies the field's geometric centre, positioned to provide equal sight lines in all directions. Roman engineering principles guided its construction, carefully fitted stones creating a stable platform that will remain level, despite any earth tremors that might accompany celestial disturbances. The altar's surface bears carved inscriptions invoking Diana's protection and requesting her continued vigilance over Roman territories. Around the altar, your assistants have arranged the materials needed for tonight's extended ceremony. Bundles of sacred wood, oak from groves dedicated to Jupiter, cedar imported from Lebanon, and aromatic pine resin gathered from forests north of the Alps create neat pyramids that will feed protective fires throughout the night. Clay vessels filled with offerings stand ready for presentation to divine attention. Wine from Falernian vineyards, olive oil pressed from trees blessed during harvest festivals, and honey collected from hives maintained by Vestal virgins. The bronze braziers that will contain tonight's offering fires have been polished to mirror brightness by temple slaves trained in proper care of religious equipment. Each brazier bears relief decorations depicting scenes from Roman mythology. Diana hunting with her silver bow, Luna driving her chariot across star-filled skies, and the twins Romulus and Remus nursed by the she-wolf who founded the dynasty that rules the known world. These images will focus divine attention on specifically Roman concerns during tonight's ritual communications. You begin the preliminary observations that must precede formal augury, scanning the evening sky for signs that indicate divine disposition toward tonight's undertaking. The flight patterns of birds provide the first layer of information. Eagles soaring from the north suggest Jupiter's approval, while ravens gathering in unusual numbers might indicate supernatural warnings. Tonight, the bird omens appear mixed, normal species following expected patterns, but their numbers seem reduced as if many creatures seek shelter from approaching dangers. The wind direction carries significance that trained augurs learn to interpret through years of study and practice. Tonight's breeze flows steadily from the east, traditionally a favourable sign that suggests divine messages travelling from the sunrise lands where gods begin each day's journey across the heavens. But the wind carries scents that trouble your professional instincts, the metallic smell that precedes thunderstorms, mixed with the acrid odour of distant fires and something else you cannot identify, but that raises primitive fears inherited from Rome's earliest ancestors. Your assistants approach carrying the rolled papyrus scrolls that contain tonight's ritual procedures, their movements precise and respectful as befits servants participating in ceremonies that could determine the empire's survival. These young men, selected from patrician families and trained in religious law since childhood, understand the gravity of tonight's situation without requiring detailed explanation. Their faces show the composed determination that Roman culture instills in those called to serve the state during times of crisis. The principal scroll contains the complete text of the Lunar Defensa, the great prayer cycle developed during the Punic Wars when Hannibal's victories convinced many Romans that the gods had withdrawn their protection from the city. This prayer sequence, chanted continuously throughout lunar eclipses, creates spiritual resonance that allegedly strengthens Diana's resolve to maintain her protective watch over Roman territories. The Latin verses flow with the measured cadence that poets craft to aid memorization and enhance ritual effectiveness. Secondary scrolls provide detailed instructions for interpreting the various omens that accompany lunar disturbances, colour changes in the moon's surface, irregularities in its rising time, and the atmospheric phenomena that often coincide with celestial anomalies. These interpretive guidelines represent accumulated wisdom from generations of augurs who face similar challenges, their observations recorded in the meticulous detail, that characterizes Roman administrative practices applied to religious purposes. The third category of scrolls contains information so sensitive that only the senior augur and his designated successors are permitted to read them. Emergency procedures for situations where normal ritual responses prove inadequate. These texts describe desperate measures that Roman religion normally forbids, techniques borrowed from Etruscan haruspices and Eastern mystery cults that Rome officially scorns but secretly preserves for extreme circumstances. As full darkness approaches, you begin the formal opening of tonight's augury by invoking the traditional formula that establishes sacred space and requests divine attention. Your voice carries clearly across the Campus Martius as you speak the ancient words, "Mighty Diana, guardian of the night sky, we your faithful servants gather in this sacred place to seek your continued protection over the Roman people and their empire. Grant us clear sight to read your messages and wisdom to understand your will." The prayer echoes back from distant buildings, its sound altered by acoustics in ways that trained ears learn to interpret as indicators of divine response. Tonight's echo sounds clear and strong, suggesting that the goddess remains attentive to Roman concerns despite the cosmic troubles affecting other regions. But underlying the strong echo, you detect fainter sounds that might indicate competing supernatural influences seeking to interfere with your communications. Your assistants begin lighting the offering fires according to the precise sequence specified in the ritual texts. The first flame kindles in the central brazier using flint and steel, blessed during the Vestal Festival, its initial spark catching tinder made from papyrus scrolls inscribed with prayers to Diana. This master fire will serve as the source for all other flames used tonight, ensuring that every aspect of the ceremony maintains connection to properly consecrated spiritual power. The sacred wood burns with distinctive characteristics that provide additional omens for interpretation. Oak logs crackling with sounds like distant thunder, cedar releasing aromatic smoke that rises in straight columns despite the evening breeze, pine resin creating brief flares of intensely bright flame that illuminate the altar area with supernatural brilliance. Each type of wood contributes specific spiritual qualities to the protective fire that will shield tonight's observations from malevolent interference. As the fires establish themselves, you turn attention to calibrating the astronomical instruments that will measure lunar behavior with Roman precision. The astrolabe requires careful adjustment to account for seasonal changes in stellar positions, its bronze rings rotating around central pivots with the smooth motion that Greek craftsmanship achieved through mathematical understanding of celestial mechanics. Roman modifications to the basic Greek design include additional scales for measuring the specific angles that Roman augural practice considers significant. The water clock demands equally careful preparation, its bronze chambers filled with water from the sacred spring that has never failed throughout Rome's history. This timepiece will mark the precise moments when ritual actions must be performed, its steady dripping providing the temporal framework that gives Roman ceremonies their renowned organization and effectiveness. Each drop of water that falls creates a soft sound that helps maintain the meditative focus required for accurate omen interpretation. The offering vessels arranged around the altar contain the finest products that Roman civilization can provide. Wine aged in cellars that have stored vintages for generations, olive oil pressed from trees planted by Rome's earliest colonists, honey gathered from apiaries established by religious foundations, whose endowments ensure perpetual maintenance. These offerings represent not just material wealth, but the accumulated achievement of centuries of Roman expansion and cultural development. The Campus Martius around you fills gradually with the Roman citizens who will participate in tonight's defensive ceremony. Military veterans gather in organized formations that reflect their former legion assignments, their disciplined silence contrasting with the nervous energy of civilian participants. Senators arrive in litters carried by slaves trained in the elaborate protocol required for transporting Rome's highest officials. Wealthy merchants contribute additional offerings from their warehouses, exotic goods acquired through trade networks that span the known world. But most impressive are the ordinary citizens who come despite having no official obligation to participate in state religious ceremonies. Shop owners close their businesses early to attend. Craftsmen leave their workshops still wearing leather aprons stained with the honest labour that builds Roman prosperity. Mothers carry sleepy children who will witness history being made on this sacred field. Their presence demonstrates the civic devotion that has sustained Roman power through centuries of expansion and occasional setback. As the crowd grows, You observe the social dynamics that reveal how deeply tonight's crisis affects Roman society. Patrician and plebeian families stand together despite the class divisions that normally separate them. Veterans of different legions share stories and wine without regard for the rivalries that occasionally flare during peacetime. Even the slaves who accompany their masters show unusual attentiveness, understanding that supernatural threats make no distinction between free and bonded individuals. The organised chaos of Roman public assembly gradually gives way to the respectful attention that characterises religious gatherings. Conversations fade to whispers, then to silence as citizens recognise that their individual concerns must yield to collective participation in spiritual defence of their civilization. This transformation from urban crowd to religious congregation demonstrates the cultural disciplines that have enabled Rome to absorb diverse peoples into a unified imperial system. The eastern horizon begins to show the pale glow that announces lunar approach as you complete the preliminary phases of tonight's ceremony. Your astronomical calculations, verified through consultation with Greek mathematical texts and Roman observational records, predict that the moon will rise within minutes carrying the bronze coloration that has alarmed observers throughout the empire. If these predictions prove accurate, the emergency procedures outlined in the secret scrolls may become necessary to prevent cosmic catastrophe. You raise your augur's staff toward the brightening horizon and speak the words that formally request divine guidance in interpreting tonight's omens. Diana, whose silver arrows never miss their mark, whose hounds pursue the enemies of justice through eternal darkness, grant your servants clear vision to understand the messages you send through celestial signs. Let no deception cloud our sight, no fear disturb our judgment, no doubt weaken our resolve to serve the Roman people according to your divine will. The prayer carries across the assembled crowd, repeated by thousands of voices in unison, that creates acoustic effects impossible to achieve through individual effort. This collective prayer generates spiritual energy that allegedly strengthens the connection between mortal ceremony and divine attention, increasing the likelihood that tonight's ritual interventions will prove successful in maintaining lunar protection over Roman territories. As the horizon brightens and the critical moment approaches, you position yourself at the altar's eastern edge, where lunar light will first illuminate the sacred space. Your instruments stand ready to measure whatever anomalies appear. Your assistants hold the emergency materials that may be needed if traditional responses prove inadequate. The Roman citizens gathered behind you represent the civilization whose continued existence may depend on tonight's ceremonial success. But as you watch the eastern sky for the first silver gleam of moonrise, one sobering question dominates your thoughts. Will the disciplined courage that has conquered the Mediterranean world prove sufficient to compel a reluctant goddess to continue her nightly journey across the heavens that Roman prosperity depends upon? The quill pen in your ink-stained fingers scratches softly across parchment as you record the final observations that will complete tonight's chronicle of celestial transformation. Your name is Brother Theodoros, keeper of astronomical records at the monastery of St. Catherine, guardian of knowledge that bridges the ancient wisdom of fallen empires and the emerging understanding that Christian faith brings to cosmic mysteries. The reports that have reached this remote sanctuary over recent months tell a story of worldwide lunar disturbance that challenges everything your predecessors believed about the relationship between heaven and earth. Your cell occupies the monastery's highest tower, positioned to provide clear views across the Sinai wilderness, where stars shine with crystalline purity, undimmed by the smoke and dust of distant cities. The chamber's narrow windows frame different sections of the night sky, each opening designed according to calculations that blend Greek mathematical precision with Christian symbolic meaning. Through centuries of careful observation, the monks of St. Catherine have maintained records that span the transition from pagan astronomy to Christian cosmology. The wooden writing desk before you bears the accumulated weight of decades spent in scholarly labour, ink stains that mark particularly intense sessions of calculation and transcription, worn grooves carved by countless hours of careful penmanship, and small burn marks from oil lamps that provided illumination through long nights of academic devotion. This desk has supported the work of 7 previous astronomical chroniclers, each one adding his own layer of knowledge to the monastery's growing understanding of celestial phenomena. Your brown woolen habit, rough woven by the monastery's textile workshops, from wool provided by flocks grazing in nearby valleys, represents the humble lifestyle that monastic vows require. The fabric carries the familiar scents of frankincense from chapel services, olive oil from the scriptorium lamps, and the dry desert air that preserves manuscripts in this ancient library better than any techniques known in damper climates. Around your waist, the simple rope cord bears knots that mark your 23 years of monastic service. The parchment scrolls arranged across your workspace contain the most comprehensive collection of lunar observations assembled anywhere in the Christian world. These records begin with copies of ancient Greek astronomical texts, continue through Roman imperial observations, and extend into the present with meticulous documentation of every significant celestial event witnessed from this desert sanctuary. Each entry combines mathematical precision with theological interpretation that seeks to understand God's purposes in the cosmic order. The most recent entries describe phenomena that challenge traditional explanations: lunar colour variations that follow no predictable pattern, timing irregularities that disrupt agricultural planning throughout the empire, and eclipse events that last far longer than mathematical calculations predict. These anomalies suggest that the celestial machinery operates according to principles more complex than previous generations understood, requiring new approaches that blend empirical observation with spiritual discernment. Your correspondence with scholars throughout Byzantium and beyond provides a broader perspective on the worldwide nature of current lunar troubles. Letters from Constantinople describe imperial concern about celestial omens affecting state policy. Messages from monastery libraries in Syria and Egypt report similar astronomical irregularities observed by Christian astronomers throughout the Eastern Mediterranean. Even communications from Western kingdoms tell of identical phenomena witnessed by scholars working under very different cultural and religious assumptions. This convergent testimony from diverse sources convinces you that tonight's observations will record not merely local atmospheric effects or instrumental errors, but genuine changes in lunar behaviour that require careful documentation for future generations of Christian astronomers. Your responsibility extends beyond simple record-keeping, to include theological interpretation that places these cosmic events within the framework of divine providence and eschatological expectation. The oil lamp burning beside your writing materials casts steady light that illuminates the careful script flowing from your quill across the parchment surface. This lamp burns olive oil blessed during Easter services and maintained through techniques perfected over centuries of monastic scholarship. Its flame provides just enough light for detailed writing without creating the brightness that would interfere with astronomical observation through the cell's eastern window. As evening deepens toward full darkness, you begin the preliminary prayers that must precede formal observation of celestial events. These prayers, composed by earlier monk astronomers and refined through generations of use, request divine guidance in interpreting whatever messages God chooses to communicate through cosmic phenomena. The Latin words flow naturally from memory trained through daily recitation. Almighty God, Creator of heaven and earth, grant your unworthy servant clear vision to perceive your works in the celestial sphere, and wisdom to understand their significance for your people's spiritual welfare. The prayer creates the meditative state that enhances observational accuracy while maintaining proper humility before divine mystery. This spiritual preparation distinguishes Christian astronomy from its pagan predecessors, recognizing that cosmic events serve God's purposes rather than operating according to impersonal mechanical principles. The moon's behavior, however irregular, expresses divine will that human reason can partially comprehend but never fully predict or control. Your astronomical instruments reflect the monastery's unique position bridging ancient and modern knowledge. The astrolabe, inherited from a Greek scholar who sought sanctuary here during the iconoclastic controversies, provides mathematical precision in measuring celestial positions and movements. But alongside this sophisticated device rest simpler tools of monastic origin. A wooden quadrant carved by Brother Marcus 2 centuries ago bronze hourglasses that mark prayer times throughout the night, and the leather-bound notebook where you record observations in the abbreviated script that monks developed for efficient scholarship. The manuscript collection surrounding your workspace represents the monastery's greatest treasure, texts that preserve astronomical knowledge spanning over a millennium of careful observation. Ancient Greek treatises on celestial mechanics share shelf space with Roman agricultural calendars, Byzantine court records of significant astronomical events, and the ongoing chronicles maintained by successive generations of monk astronomers. These manuscripts create an intellectual lineage that connects your work tonight with scholars whose names history has forgotten, but whose dedication established the foundation for all subsequent understanding. The Theological Library provides equally important resources for interpreting tonight's observations within the framework of Christian cosmology. Patristic texts explain how celestial events relate to divine providence and human salvation. Biblical commentaries explore the eschatological significance of cosmic disturbances described in prophetic literature. Hagiographical accounts describe how saints responded to supernatural phenomena that challenged conventional understanding of natural order. This theological perspective distinguishes your approach from that of pagan astronomers, who treated celestial events as autonomous phenomena governed by impersonal forces. Christian cosmology recognizes that the same God who became incarnate for human salvation continues to govern cosmic history according to purposes that transcend human comprehension. Tonight's lunar observations, whatever they reveal, will be recorded within this framework of faithful expectation that divine providence guides all events toward their appointed fulfillment. The evening meal arrives, carried by Brother Andreas, whose kitchen duties support the scholarly work that forms this monastery's primary contribution to Christian civilization. The simple fare, bread baked from grain grown in the monastery gardens, cheese made from milk provided by goats grazing in nearby pastures, and dried fruit preserved from last autumn's harvest, represents the self-sufficient lifestyle that enables contemplative communities to pursue long-term scholarly projects without dependence on unstable external support. You eat mechanically while reviewing the calculation tables that predict tonight's lunar behaviour according to mathematical principles derived from Greek astronomical texts. These calculations, refined through Byzantine scholarship and verified against centuries of careful observation, provide the baseline against which any anomalies can be measured and recorded. If tonight's moonrise shows the bronze coloration reported from throughout the known world, precise timing and detailed description will contribute valuable data to the growing body of evidence suggesting fundamental changes in celestial mechanics. The monastery's evening routine continues around your scholarly vigil, as the community prepares for the night offices that divide monastic sleep into periods of prayer and rest. Chapel bells mark the canonical hours with bronze voices that have regulated monastic life for centuries, their sound carrying across the desert silence like temporal prayers rising toward eternal attention. The familiar rhythm of communal worship provides comfort and stability during nights when cosmic uncertainty challenges human understanding of divine order. Brother librarians secure precious manuscripts in cedar chests that protect written knowledge from desert sand, occasional moisture, and the other environmental hazards that threaten institutional memory in this harsh climate. Their careful preservation work ensures that tonight's observations will join the accumulated record available to future generations of Christian scholars who may understand cosmic events more clearly than current knowledge permits. The kitchen staff prepares simple provisions for those brothers whose duties require remaining awake through the night. Bread and watered wine that will sustain physical strength during long hours of prayer or scholarly concentration. The infirmarian checks his supply of medicinal herbs that treat the eye strain, headaches, and fatigue that often affect monks engaged in demanding intellectual labour under difficult lighting conditions. As full darkness settles over the Sinai wilderness, you begin the formal observations that will determine whether tonight marks another stage in the worldwide pattern of lunar disturbance, or perhaps signals the beginning of whatever cosmic transformation these accumulated anomalies seem to predict. Your instruments stand ready to measure timing, position, and colour variations with the precision that scientific accuracy demands. The eastern horizon shows the first pale glow that precedes moonrise as you position yourself at the window that provides optimal viewing conditions. Your notebook lies open to a fresh page, where tonight's observations will be recorded in the careful script that ensures future readers will understand exactly what was witnessed and when. The inkwell contains fresh ink mixed, according to monastic formulas, that produce writing fluid stable enough to remain legible through centuries of library storage. But alongside these practical preparations, your thoughts turn toward the theological implications of whatever tonight may reveal. If the moon indeed shows continued signs of disturbance, how should Christian cosmology interpret such phenomena? Do they represent divine judgment upon human sinfulness, natural processes operating according to principles not yet understood, or perhaps eschatological signs indicating the approaching fulfillment of prophetic expectations? The moonrise arrives with the gradual brightening that marks all normal celestial events, but your trained eyes immediately detect the anomaly that confirms the reports received from distant correspondents. The lunar surface displays distinct bronze coloration, identical to descriptions provided by scholars throughout the Christian world and beyond. This visual confirmation validates the growing body of evidence suggesting that fundamental changes affect lunar behaviour on a scale unprecedented in recorded history. You document the observation with meticulous care, recording precise timing, detailed colour description, and comparisons with previous lunar appearances preserved in the monastery's astronomical records. These measurements will contribute to the growing database that future scholars will use to understand whatever cosmic transformation currently unfolds across the night skies that Christian civilization depends upon for temporal orientation and agricultural planning. As the bronze-tinted moon climbs higher above the desert horizon, its altered appearance creates an atmosphere of profound uncertainty that challenges comfortable assumptions about cosmic stability. The familiar silver light that has illuminated human activity throughout recorded history now carries tones that suggest fundamental changes in the celestial order that Christian theology teaches reflects divine providence and eternal purpose. You continue detailed observations throughout the night, tracking the moon's path across star patterns that have remained constant since the monastery's foundation centuries ago. Every aspect of tonight's lunar behaviour receives careful documentation that will serve scholars for generations to come, contributing to whatever understanding future Christian astronomers develop regarding the cosmic transformation that appears to be unfolding during this crucial period of world history. The bronze coloration persists throughout the moon's transit, neither fading to normal silver nor deepening to more alarming hues. This consistency suggests that whatever forces produce the colour, change operate according to principles stable enough to maintain particular effects over extended periods. Such stability offers hope that the current cosmic disturbances, however unprecedented, follow discoverable patterns that human reason can eventually comprehend and perhaps predict. As dawn approaches and the moon sets in the western sky still bearing its troubling bronze tinge, you begin the theological reflection that will complete tonight's scholarly work. The observations are recorded with scientific precision, but their ultimate significance requires interpretation within the framework of Christian understanding about divine providence, natural order, and eschatological expectation. The bronze-tinted moon that Brother Theodoros documented that night quietly influenced generations of Byzantine scholars who came after him. His meticulous records, preserved in the monastery's desert library, became the foundation for a new understanding of celestial mechanics that gradually spread throughout Christian scholarship. The careful methodology he developed, combining empirical observation with theological reflection, established patterns of scientific inquiry that would shape intellectual development for centuries to come. Future astronomers building upon Theodoros's observations discovered that the lunar colour variations followed previously unrecognised cycles that connected earthly atmospheric conditions with cosmic rhythms operating on vast temporal scales. His detailed documentation provided the baseline measurements that enabled subsequent scholars to map these subtle relationships between terrestrial and celestial phenomena, advancing human understanding of the integrated systems that govern planetary existence. The theological framework Theodoros brought to his astronomical work helped Christian civilization maintain scientific curiosity during periods when cosmic uncertainty might have produced paralyzing fear or superstitious responses. His example demonstrated how faithful scholarship could embrace empirical observation while recognizing the ultimate mystery of divine providence, creating intellectual space for both scientific progress and spiritual growth within the same scholarly tradition. Monks throughout the Byzantine Empire adopted the observational techniques that Theodoros pioneered, establishing a network of astronomical stations that tracked celestial phenomena with unprecedented accuracy and geographical scope. Their collaborative records revealed patterns invisible to individual observers, advancing collective understanding through the kind of institutional cooperation that monastic communities were uniquely positioned to sustain across generations of political and social change. The manuscript tradition that preserved Theodoros's work ensured that his insights survived the various disruptions that periodically threatened Byzantine civilization. Copied and recopied by generations of scholarly monks, his astronomical chronicles provided continuity of knowledge that bridged different historical periods and enabled cumulative progress in understanding cosmic phenomena that individual lifetimes were too brief to fully comprehend. From his humble cell in the Sinai wilderness, this dedicated monk demonstrated how patient observation, combined with careful record-keeping, could contribute to humanity's growing understanding of the cosmos. His work endured long after the bronze-tinted moon ceased appearing, remembered not for dramatic achievements, but for the quiet dedication that advanced human knowledge one careful observation at a time. Like countless desert stars that shine steadily through eternal nights, Brother Theodoros's legacy illuminates the path of scholarship for those who follow, proving that faithful attention to cosmic mystery serves both scientific progress and spiritual understanding in the endless human quest to comprehend our place within the divine order that governs all existence. This completes our journey through ancient civilizations and their encounters with lunar mystery. The bronze-tinted moons that once terrified our ancestors eventually faded back to familiar silver, but the courage and dedication of those who maintain their vigils through cosmic uncertainty continues to inspire all who seek to understand the vast mysteries surrounding our small place in an infinite universe.